It can be helpful to have a mentor at work when you're trying to move forward in your career. Someone older and more experienced to show you the ropes and open doors for you. But in our multi-generational workplaces, young people have a lot to offer as well. Enter the idea of reverse mentoring. And it's about more than just Gen Z showing Gen X how to use technology. Joining me now to explain is Breen, Learning and Communications Manager at Challenge Factory, a research agency and consultancy. So first of all, can you explain what reverse mentoring is?
Sure. So mentoring is something that happens in all work environments. We're always learning from each other all the time. And it's really important now more than ever because younger workers have less in the workplace actual experience. And longevity, on the flip side, shows us that older workers aren't shifting into retirement, they're shifting careers. So it's a benefit for younger workers because they get context and culture cues, and it's a benefit for older workers because they get exposed to new ideas and points of view, which can open up career possibilities or paths they never thought of. But I want to be a little controversial here and say the word of reverse mentoring, that wording makes it seem ageist. We do typically think about younger people needing to learn or be guided, but why focus specifically on that reverse? Mentoring is always a two-way street. It's not unique or weird for older people to learn or be guided. That is ageist and untrue.
All right, so a bit of a misnomer maybe.
Joining us now to explain more is Lisa Taylor, president of Challenge Factory, co-author of The Talent Revolution, Longevity and the Future of Work.
So reverse mentoring is this idea that we can all learn from each other, which is not a new idea and not something that is unique to this moment in time. The concept behind reverse mentoring is actually putting in place programs and structures that recognize that the world of work is changing so fast that we all have opportunities to learn and grow from each other.
So how can employers and managers foster those connections and encourage this reverse mentoring?
In workplace relationships, what we found at Challenge Factory and what research supports is that the most natural types of relationships actually happen in groups of threes, not one-on-one. So groups of threes naturally cluster together. They support each other. There's a natural flow of conversation where there isn't pressure to think like, oh my gosh, that person's about to stop talking. It's going to be my turn now. It just naturally flows really well when there's someone who's speaking, someone who's listening, and someone who's kind of in that facilitator role. And we naturally fall into that type of relationship with each other all the time. And so employers that are looking to do this in a way that builds culture, that generates better work-life balance, will look at how they can help their employees spend a little bit more time doing work in clusters that have three people that may have either different backgrounds, different work experience, different ages in order to be able to leverage each other's strengths.
These intergenerational triads generate great conversation, support, innovation, some life in the room, stronger financial outcomes, so it hits the bottom line, and stronger cultures. Employers right now need to keep staff engaged with threatened recession and tight labor markets and inflation. It puts a lot of pressure on them to keep people engaged and productive, to keep them, to retain them. And as an employee, when you're engaged, you start talking at the dinner table in a way that's positive. And we all talk about how diversity is really important at work. And age is one of those groups that doesn't always get mentioned when we talk about diversity. But there's a difference between 20, 40, and 60. Like, I want to be a fly on the wall when that triad is hanging out.
What are some of the benefits of this?
So when you have an opportunity to meet with people and to be able to advance work and ask really great questions, you learn a lot about yourself as well as the work that you're doing. So often when people first approach and they'll say, Lisa, what's a good question for me to ask when I first meet a mentor? Should I ask them how they got started in their career? If we're thinking about more traditional approaches to mentoring where it's a younger person that's looking to approach someone who has more experience, that type of perspective or question really sets it up to be, I'm here to listen and you're here to instruct or to give me your perspective. Instead, if younger people or if anyone within the relationship were to approach the opening question to be, what keeps you here? Like, what do you really like about what you're doing right now? Now we're having a current conversation that everyone can participate in and can engage in. It actually increases culture. It leads to better engagement, and it helps people get to real and meaningful conversations about things that matter to them that maybe they haven't had a chance to ask someone about, or to raise that there's something they're struggling with that's keeping them a little bit dissatisfied, and how can I get some support with that?
People listening to us right now might be saying, well, that kind of happens organically at work without any type of sort of formal introduction or creation of groups. I mean, do you have a sense of what's happening out there in the workplace that some people might already be doing that might be sort of a key to success?
So the pandemic made it really hard for serendipity to happen. So it is true that in workplaces, people do naturally form these relationships all the time, and smart employers pick up on that and use that curiosity about coworkers and relationship building among the staff. In the past, that might have just naturally started to happen with team meetings or meeting in the cafeteria for lunch. But now that we're not all in the office at the same time, having that opportunity for it just to naturally and organically happen, to organically have a couple of people stay behind in a Zoom room and chat at the end of a meeting, isn't really happening the same way it would happen if we were physically in person. And so thinking about how do we continue to foster and build culture and relationships between people who don't necessarily have time scheduled on their calendar to work together, but should really know each other across the organization, is something that takes a little bit more intention and meaning to be able to make sure that that's actually happening.
How does this end up not being more work for one person in particular, or ultimately part of just the natural workload?
So that's a great question. And what we don't want to do in an initiative that's designed to build culture and build engagement and help people feel better and more satisfied in their work is to add yet another thing. Oh, now it's Tuesday at 3:00. I better go for mentoring. That's the wrong way to go about this.
Employers, they normally have these traditional matching programs where you put your name in a hat, there's prescribed timelines, you get matched up, and mentorship happens on top of day-to-day work. We encourage a softer approach where you use your intergenerational triads and your mentorship to do the work that needs doing. Don't add it on top of work. Integrate it into the real life work that needs doing. And then it doesn't become a burden or another thing on your to-do list.
Instead, if we foster these types of three-way relationships and have people use them to get their natural work done. If you have things that you need to be doing in your job, and now you know this triad is here to support you in that, it's your sounding board, it's your test mechanism, it's your proofreading circle, it's the place that you go when you need to bounce ideas off of each other. The relationship, the mentoring relationship, will naturally occur as you get your work done. And that's true for all of the members in the triad. Participating in mentoring programs that are overly formal and overly structured is a burden on everybody that participates. So how can we embed this so that it's actually just natural workplace learning and relationship building that actually accomplishes the kinds of tasks that need to be done?
I like but it's not more work, because frequently these kinds of things, you're right, it stacks up on what you're supposed to be doing. At least that's the feeling. So what are the benefits to younger workers being part of a reverse mentoring relationship?
We are changing jobs so often now, much more frequently than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. If you are fostering real, authentic, meaningful relationships at work, when you switch and go to a different company or a different role within the organization, if you have a real relationship, you get to keep that relationship, right? When you move on. A benefit for older workers who are thinking about, okay, what do I want to do next when I hit 50, when I hit 60, is that if they only have networks that have people that are their age or older than them, their network, their LinkedIn contacts are going to age out. Everybody's going to retire, and then they don't have any contacts. So you want to have an intergenerational network if you're an older worker. So there's benefits on both sides.
So assuming you get into this, a workplace considers doing this kind of mentoring, are there any pitfalls that they need to be aware of or avoid?
There's always the potential pitfall of feeling like a burden, whether you're an older worker or a younger worker. we all have burdens, and making it tied to real work, as I mentioned, is really important. Or another pitfall is that burden piece, but sort of feeling that really internally. A way to avoid that is to be intentional about your personal goals. You can't do that with like a new friendship or a new relationship, but it's normal at work. You can't like meet a new friend and be like, these are my goals. But at work, you talk about your goals with fellow coworkers all the time. So be really intentional. State your goals out loud for what you want this mentorship triad to be. It allows for boundary setting. It gets other people in your triad to share their goals and boundaries. Like, here's what I'm hoping to get out of this. Here's the rabbit holes I want to avoid. And the other pitfall is that we often think of young people as being in precarious employment or being paid less. So why are we getting our young workers on top of all the things they're dealing with to like mentor our older workers, right? Like you said at the top with, Gen Z teaching Gen X tech.
Right.
Many older workers are in precarious situations too. Decent work is a problem for everyone. So just noticing those generational divides and being curious, is that what's really going on here?
Just lastly, talent shortages happening across the board. Lots of people missing in a variety of roles, lots of employees missing in lots of jobs. How do you see this becoming a priority when simply having enough people to stay open seems to be an issue?
So that also depends on the individual workplace. But what we know that one of the best ways to retain people and to attract people into workplaces is to demonstrate that you have a culture and that you're the kind of place where people want to work. When they go home or when they're over the holidays and they're sitting around the family table and someone says, "How's work?" What do they say? Do they talk about the great relationships that they have and what they're learning, or something interesting that they found from a coworker? Or do they talk about something that's negative and kind of, not exactly attractive for someone who might be listening and wondering where their next step is? So even in times when work is short, people are still in relationship with each other at work, and people are still learning. So what would you like them to be learning? If you want them to be learning how to build on each other's strengths and how to build a really strong culture that actually attracts more people who want to be a part of it, paying attention to the relationships they have at work and the strength and power of how they're supported at work is one of the cheapest, fastest, and easiest ways to retain your staff.
Well, lots to think about there. Definitely an interesting conversation and a starting point. Lisa Taylor, thanks for this.
My pleasure.
Lisa Taylor there, president of Challenge Factory, a research agency and consulting agency as well, focused on the future of work, careers, and employment.
Breen is the Learning and Communications Manager at Challenge Factory. We reached her this morning in Halifax.